Hey, everybody. So we're live. What's happening? We got a lot going on today. Welcome to the I Just Want This Done Divorce podcast. So here we go. We got a Dancing with the Stars pro saying his ex agreed to take their daughters to Hong Kong for a year. That was 3 years ago. Now he's using the word abduction in a court filing. Is it kidnapping? What's going on there? A fashion mogul checked the wrong box on a form and accidentally maybe handed primary custody of her 11-year-old to her husband, who's sitting in federal prison. We'll talk about that. And everyone's favorite, Charlie Sheen, was looking at a $15 million child support backlog and settled it for 500 grand, maybe 3 cents on the dollar or so. And last but not least, an OnlyFans model and a fake divorce, maybe. Welcome to I Just Want This Done, not just another boring divorce lawyer podcast. So I'm your host, Rayford Palmer. With me, as always, the great Rahul Iyer.
Hey.
Thank you. We're here to rock and roll and get right into it. So we are loaded with stuff for today's show. And as always, education and entertainment are the watchwords, everybody.
We want prenup. We want prenup.
And we always want prenup. So let's get right into it. We're not going to waste a lot of time with idle chit chat for you people. This is a 93 octane episode. For a few Avgas aviation fans out there, 100 octane, I think, right? Okay.
100.
So let's talk about the first story up for bids here is Gleb Savchenko and Elena Samodanova. Easy for me to say.
Rolls off the tongue.
Exactly. Not their fault. So this story is interesting because Gleb is a professional dancer on Dancing with the Stars. And apparently these folks have been married quite a few years. They have 2 kids. One is 15. The other one's younger. And he's 42. I guess he's been in Dancing with the Stars a long time. I don't watch the show, but I know about it. His wife, Elena, is a dancer and choreographer. Married 06, announced separation several years ago, 2020. Divorce concluded somewhere between 20 and 21. And 2 daughters, like I said, one was 15, the other one's 8. And the parties, and here's where the rub comes in. So the 2 of them signed a post-judgment agreement allowing the ex-wife to move the girls to Hong Kong temporarily, in air quotes, for 1 year. So she could work on a project in the region, allegedly, I would say. The children were supposed to return to the U.S. by June 30th, 2024. Guess what? They did not return. Savchenko, the ex-wife, alleges she obtained permanent Hong Kong residency, enrolled the kids in a private school, got a pet, got engaged, had another child with her fiance. Basically, she's built another life in Hong Kong, essentially. He says this has forced him to travel to Hong Kong each year to visit the kids, which he's done multiple times despite efforts she's made to limit his access, he alleges. He's filed a request for emergency custody in LA court on July 13th, seeking temporary legal and sole physical custody of the older daughter, Olivia, with no visitation to his wife pending further court order. Interestingly enough, it's not clear from the stories that we've linked here in the show notes why it is that Olivia's here, the older one, and not the younger one. I'm only speculating, but the child's a teenager and probably old enough to drive her mom crazy. So she probably put her on a plane and said, get out of here. This is complete speculation on my part, but I wouldn't put it past her because the daughter, according to dad, says she doesn't want to go back and wants to stay with dad. And wants to start at a local high school in Sherman Oaks in August. So the child's old enough to get to largely speak for herself in our state, in Illinois, when you're over 12, 13 years old. Of course, we'll put a lot of credence into what a child's desires are. But what I want to get to here is apparently he claims that the kids were taken to Vietnam and Moscow over his objection. Okay. We don't know if any of this stuff is true. This is all allegations. So apparently custody mediation set for August 5th, probably mandatory mediation, my guess, because we have the similar thing in Illinois. So here's the breakdown on this. First of all, you've got to be very careful with any agreement to let children go abroad to another country, because good luck no matter what the court says here in the United States, you have to get a court order enforced in a foreign country. So in this case, even if the judge ordered that he gets custody of the younger child and the older one, which right now he's not asking for, but let's assume he did, he would have to use what's called the Hague Convention to get this order enforced internationally by a court over in Hong Kong. And remember, Hong Kong is now a Chinese protectorate or possession or whatever. The UK gave up Hong Kong in 1997 pursuant to a treaty with China. Supposedly, Hong Kong is a participant in the Hague Convention. Now, countries, not all the countries in the world are signatories to this convention. The convention is essentially a treaty between countries that says we will create a system for recognizing child custody issues, especially international child abduction or alleged abduction. So there is a system where if you have a court order about child custody, you can have it enforced in a foreign country. In this case, like England, for example, has signed the Hague Convention, and you will see custody orders between the US and the UK. And a court in the UK could enforce a US custody order and have children returned from the UK to the United States. Now, there are exceptions. There are emergency rules if there's abuse and things like that. And the Hague Convention only applies to people under 16. So once a child reaches 16, there's no longer application of the convention, and the kid is effectively out of your reach, even if the child's in a Hague country. So this is really important because if the children make it to a foreign country that is not a signatory to the Hague Convention, good luck ever seeing that child again, number one. People have resorted to, let's say, unorthodox, potentially illegal means to return children to the United States, like hired investigators, mercenaries, et cetera. I've heard stories about that. I've not been involved in cases like that. They find people locally and get the child back. I've heard of stories about this being done, for example, in India, where the country is extremely unfriendly to foreign orders and is not a signatory to the Hague Convention. Correct, Rahul? I believe that's right.
Yes,
Pretty
that's
sure.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And here's the other thing, though. And our information is that Hong Kong is a signatory to the Hague Convention. However, and that's probably a legacy of being part of the UK originally, or a protectorate of the UK, special zone, whatever it was called. The problem is China now runs the show. And my guess is good luck with a court in Hong Kong recognizing a US court order, even if they were signatories to the Hague Convention. That's just my 2 cents. I'm not an international child custody expert by any stretch, but what we want to do is just have you understand, you really should never agree to some order like this unless you're confident. You've got to be very confident that the parent intends to return that child or have some kind of leverage. Because once the child is in another country, you've now got an exponentially more complicated job getting the child brought back to the United States. So I don't know why he would have agreed to this in the first place. I'm sure he had his reasons at that time. They might have been getting along well, but now he's regretting it. So, I don't know if he's going to have any chance at getting the younger child returned to the U.S., but I bet he has a pretty good chance at keeping the older child here, especially if the older child wants to stay here. So courts don't like splitting up children. But again, this court might order return of that child. But I wish Gleb good luck in getting that enforced in Hong Kong. Maybe it would work out, but I would be skeptical. So this kind of stuff here, it was only supposed to be for a year. These limited agreed relocations are, how do you know they're going to come back? Even if it's another state, once you allow that move, it's going to be exponentially more difficult to get somebody to return, even interstate. So because you've admitted that the move is okay,
And then the kids settle down. The courts don't like uprooting kids
Yeah,
every year. They're like, you know what? The kid needs to have some consistency. You can't just be moving every year one
right.
place to the other. And even, just kind of to add to your point here about the Hague Convention. We keep saying Hague Convention, obviously we intend for it to be the Hague Convention on International Child Abduction. But the point is, even in a country like the UK, it's just a giant pain in the what to be able to go into court, try to enforce this, bring it back. It costs a ton of money, takes time, opens you up to litigation in a foreign country. You got to get foreign lawyers. I mean, it's just way too much work, even for a signatory. So,
Right.
it's just be careful.
Yeah, you need to be you got to be very careful. Get the advice of an experienced attorney before you agree to have somebody remove a child out of the state, or in our state, more than 25 miles away from their home, or 50 miles if you're outside of Cook County and the collar counties. Be very careful about children being moved by a parent. And if a child is certainly moved far away or out of state, you need to jump on that right away, because you may not be aware of this, but in Illinois, well, actually across the country, if a child is relocated for more than 6 months and you don't do anything about it, that becomes their new home state, generally speaking. And you're going to have a tough time getting them back to Illinois or whatever state they're from. And that's part of the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction and Enforcement Act, the UCCJEA, that determines that between all the states in the United States. And so once a child moves, don't let the parent tell you, oh, it's just for a little while. I need to be here with my parents here in Texas. I'm assuming you were like in Illinois. And, we're just, money's tight. We got to be down here for a while. That's 6 months and 1 day ticks over. You've got big problems. So if there's relocation or child moved out of state, more than a vacation, call a divorce lawyer right away. Rahul, tell us about the next story. This is the check the box pleading problem. Let's go and get into this one.
Yeah. So we previously, I think in a previous episode, we talked about Kimora Lee Simmons and her ex, Tim Leisner. So
Yep.
people who don't know, Kimora Lee Simmons is a fashion mogul, has the brand Baby Fat, and now is legally known as Kimora Lee. She was married to Tim Leisner, who was a former Goldman Sachs exec who pled guilty in 2018 for his role in the multi-billion-dollar IMDb corruption scandal. So they were married in 2014, separated in 2020, legally separated in 2022, and were divorced formally. They signed the divorce paperwork in February of 2026, and they filed for divorce, I think, in April 2026, shortly before Leisner, entered federal prison in Pennsylvania. They believe his sentence is going to go through about September 2027. In his petition, he asked for joint legal and physical custody and spousal support, and asked that the court terminate Kimora's ability to collect support. In June 2021, she filed her response. She agreed that, of course, irreconcilable differences ended the marriage. That might be the only ground for divorce there. But in the custody section, I guess, in these responses, this is a form. She checked the box that said Tim should get physical or primary legal and physical custody. Again,
Whoops.
when we're talking about, yeah, exactly. Oops. Big oops. It's, oops is definitely right. So it sounds like the paperwork here that they're completing. So when I said earlier he signed paperwork, it meant to file for divorce. And now she's signing paperwork in response to the filing of divorce. And it sounds like it's all just a bunch of form filling. In Illinois, you do have standard forms that you can fill out, but more likely than not, people retain attorneys and will write out in narrative form what you're asking for rather than checking boxes, because box checking is A, you don't need to be a lawyer to check a box, and B, you tend to sometimes check wrong boxes.
Yeah.
And so he asked for joint legal and physical custody. She said he should have physical and legal custody. And so she didn't really align with either one. So they said then, of course, that the box or the checkbox was a clerical error and that she had full custody of Wolf because, well, he's in prison.
He's in jail, right?
So other parts of the response that weren't disrupted, terminate the ability to pay support to him while simultaneously requesting spousal support to be paid to her. So point of this is, big point here is you got two big things here. A checkbox, you got to be sure what you're doing. I mean, it's a clerical error, sure. I mean, is it going to be held against you? Practically speaking, no. But it's still a pleading and it's an admission. You're admitting that this is my position. And
that's the part right. I wanted to get it that I was glad you mentioned that because even if she's able to amend the pleading to check the other box, and people say, well, it's impossible for him to have joint legal and physical custody. Well, that's true right now, but not in that long in the future, he's going to be out of prison. And one thing people don't realize is when you amend or you revise that initial pleading, that old one still exists.
Right.
And the other party, the husband, can use it against her and say, well, you admitted as a matter of law that I should have joint physical and legal custody. So she's not necessarily fixing the problem by filing an amended pleading. Temporarily, she's fine. But, he's going to have a decent argument to make that she admitted that he's capable of having joint physical and legal custody.
Right. Exactly.
At some point in the future, a year, X amount of time in the future. Now, there could be some hearing about modifying where current evidence would come into play about what the story is then. But it's a real problem, potentially.
Exactly.
She can't just erase it. I guess what I want to say is you can't just fix it by checking the other box and going, oh, see, we're all good now. It doesn't erase the old one. People don't realize when you file an amended pleading, your previous admissions are still binding on you in the case.
Right. Now, the second, you would just basically have to hope that the judge says, you know what, I understand you made a mistake. But but the first one is still part of the record. The record doesn't get changed. It's not like you take an eraser and erase the first thing and slap this one on top there. You got the first one, then you got the second one. So anyway, how do you make sure this doesn't happen to you, practically speaking? And how do people just generally make sure this doesn't happen, right? It's just pretty simple. As a standard practice in most firms, paralegals prepare paperwork, and the paralegals usually are very good at their job. And we have very, very good paralegals at our firm. And but that's not to say an attorney shouldn't look at it. And when an attorney looks at it, they shouldn't just say, I'm sure it's right here. I just looked at it for the sake of looking at it. I'll sign it. You just make sure, read it to make sure everything is right. It takes an extra 30 seconds, especially if it's a standard answer you're checking boxes for. You kind of know which boxes need to be checked. So you're not reading a 20-page memo. So, the clients, they typically trust, like I would do with my tax accountant. I'm not going through every schedule, every line item, making sure the numbers are right. I gave him the paperwork. I presume the numbers in my return are correct. He's like, this is what it is. Sign here, and I sign there. So same thing with this. I'm sure the people just sign it. So, we want to make sure that you don't have a situation where you have to go back and amend it and then have some other admission you did not want to be part of the record now be part of the record. And so here at STG, at our firm, we walk you through things. We walk you through things to make sure you understand what it's saying, and then we go ahead and move forward. It takes an extra 5-10 minutes, no big deal. Then it's the custody point, right? Because, I mean, it's an admission, but the guy's in jail. So right now, it's, they can just go to court and say, well, that's not what I meant. He's in jail. I don't think he should have sole. You're not going to have the kid live in jail with him. So it's like, that's really going to have a minimal effect right now. But like you said, when he comes out of jail, he's got something he could say. Secondly, you have an issue where it's the child's needs change. So what the child might need now might be different than what the child needs next to end of 2027 when he's released. And custody is always modifiable upon a showing of changed circumstances. Him getting out of prison is a changed circumstance, so it can be revisited. And so it just creates an extra wrinkle that you shouldn't have to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. So, just be careful. Read over these pleadings before you sign them. Your lawyer's going to give you these things to sign. And ultimately, your attorney should be making sure this stuff's correct. But you, as the client, have some skin in the game and you need to participate. Being a client in a legal case means you've got to be invested in the case. And the lawyer can only do so much for you, but you as the person involved in the case are the expert in the facts. And the more active you are as a client, the better off you're going to be. You're going
Right.
to save money and time, generally speaking. You're going to get a better result from your attorney if you're engaged in your case.
Yeah.
So moving on, we're always
Got
always
we got
like a
Chuck
Charlie,
Sheen.
always like a Charlie
Mhm.
Sheen story. And if you haven't seen I think it's on Netflix. If you haven't seen his recent bio pic about him, it's actually excellent. And I was surprised. You actually feel bad for the guy, really. I mean, he's obviously he's charming in a way that it's hard not to like the guy despite his bad behavior. And the show was really interesting. So I put a plug in there. If you haven't seen it, it's actually super entertaining, especially if you were like me, you grew up with Charlie in movies like Platoon and Hot Shots and stuff like that along the way. He's actually had quite a varied acting career. I never really watched him in Two and a Half Men, which he was in for quite a while, but he was in a lot of movies. He was quite good at it too. So um, they do a good job tracing his career and interviewing a lot of interesting, actors that worked with him to talk about what he did. And it's pretty interesting. Anyway, Charlie Sheen.
There was a time he was huge. He was just huge at a certain time.
He blew up. Like when he was in Platoon and all that, he was kind of the it star for a while, like in the late 80s, going into the 90s. He was really a monster star for a while there. And, the drugs and everything caught up with him. And then he had that resuscitation of his career with Two and a Half Men that he managed to kind of screw up again. And he admits all that. So this is about Charlie Sheen and Brooke Mueller. Giant child support claims settled for $500,000. So here's the story. Charlie's 60, Brooke's 48, married 2008, divorced only 3 years later. They had 2 kids, Bob and Max, now 17 years old. The judgment ordered him to pay 55 grand per month. He was probably making bank from the TV show at the time and
Two and a Half Men.
Residuals from movies and stuff. But he was supposed to start paying in 2010. In December 25, Mueller filed an LA Superior Court claiming like $9 million in unpaid support and a ton of accrued interest, literally like $6.5 million in interest on the child support, which was $15 million total. She laid out the payment history. So he paid in full through June 2011, so about a year. Then he paid 300 grand in 2011, so 55 into like 6 months, right? 6 months or so he paid. Nothing.
And 1 second, Rafe, just real quick here. I just pulled this up. For context, his earnings, according to Gemini.
Oh, thank you.
His earnings at his peak, Two and a Half Men, Charlie Sheen earned up to $1.8 to $2 million per episode.
Per show.
Making him per episode. Yeah, exactly. Making him the highest paid actor on television. Over his 8 seasons on the show, he reportedly amassed over $250 million just from his salary alone.
Wild.
So,
yeah.
Despite being fired in 2011 from the show, he reportedly made an estimated $100 million in royalties, and he later sold his back-end syndication and participation rights for roughly $27 million in 2016. So the numbers seem huge, but they were, I think, maybe commensurate with what he was earning at the time. Nevertheless, as you were.
So that's a great point because it gives you context, which is important. So here's a couple interesting facts here. Back when she filed, a rep for Charlie I'm looking at the TMZ article, links in the show notes, the first TMZ article. Brooke was in and out of rehab, according to a representative for Charlie, for the past 15 years. And Charlie had 100% custody of the kids during that time. And they say, which is why she's not entitled to child support. So that's the gist was, he said, yeah, I didn't pay because I had the kids the whole time. She was in and out of rehab. Of course, apparently she's a winner and has issues. Not surprisingly, she's, like attracts like, and he was into all that stuff. So unfortunately, mom's been in and out of rehab for a long time, and he's taking care of the kids, which says a lot. So They negotiated a $500,000 settlement. And apparently she's cleaned up because now they say each parent's financially responsible for the sons while they're in that parent's care. Boys primarily live with Sheen. She's had reasonable and flexible custody and visitation. The agreement, they signed an agreement modifying things in 2024, conditioning the arrangement on her sobriety. A failed drug or alcohol test triggers full custody back to Sheen. However, important to note, when they're 18, it goes away anyway because they're adults. So he settled for $500,000, I think, plus some attorney's fees. But the gist is, oh yeah, plus 60,000 of her attorney's fees. So the bottom line is, it's pennies on the dollar, but she would have a tough claim here with the facts as they are. Now, here's what we want to talk about here. A couple major points. One is, don't rely on the fact that the kids live with you to challenge child support. Charlie should have had his lawyers march into court the first week, month. Once you saw the kids were really going to stay, you go right into court and you modify child support up front. You don't, because what happens is each missed support payment becomes a judgment, which accrues interest, and it's binding. He got lucky with this deal in some ways. You don't want to be on the back foot arguing, oh, well, the kids live with me, that's why I stopped paying child support. You really need to affirmatively go in and get a child support order to modify that. And courts want to see that. So it's very important to go in right away, because any reduction or modification is retroactive to the date of filing. So, and you're supposed to keep paying until the court says you don't have to. So be very careful about that. Go see a divorce lawyer who's got experience and get that court order. Don't be lazy and say, well, of course, I'm taking care of the kids. And because it's not always so black and white where you can say, oh, see, she's in rehab for all this time. It may be not so clear where you increase your parenting time days dramatically or substantially, but they're still living with the other parent too. You don't want to be in that contest, where it's like, oh, how many days? And now we're trying to go back 5 years, 7 years, 10 years and prove they were with you or whatever. A court, by the way, doesn't have to acknowledge that. A court could say, hey, you didn't come in and modify. You've got to pay these judgments. So it's a risky defense strategy in Illinois, certainly. So you want to go in and modify right away. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two is these, by the way, important to know, at least in Illinois, the support recipient or purported recipient doesn't have to prove that they weren't paid. The support payor has to prove that they did pay. So the burden is actually on the person paying, which could be difficult if you're going back 10 or 15 years. You might have actually paid, but you don't have proof of payment, which is why we always tell everybody, keep evidence of your payments. So with electronic transfers, it's easier now, but remember, banks get rid of their records after just a few years. So don't rely on the bank computer system to pull up bank statements to show you paid more than a few years back, certainly more than 7. But I wouldn't trust it more than 2 or 3 years. You need to keep those records yourself. Okay, another big thing to note is interest is the big killer here. And interest on judgments is 9% per year in Illinois, but it's per each missed judgment, each missed payment. So the interest starts accruing the day you miss the payment. And so each of those little payments is an independent judgment that's accruing its own interest. It gets to be a giant number over time. 9% is not a joke, especially these days. It's not cheap. So it stacks up automatically on top of the judgment, and there's really no way out of it. There's no defense to the interest. So I'll tell you a story. I handled a case where a lady came to me this is 10 plus years ago, but she had a child support judgment from the 1970s, and the guy paid for like a month and then stopped paying. And it was literally $25 or $50 a week, and he didn't pay. And she said he got rich later. He was a bum when they got divorced in the 70s, but he later on became very successful and was literally rich, had multiple properties, owned a bunch of real estate, had become very wealthy and was now retired, had a boat and all this stuff. and she wanted me to go after them. Kids were all grown. They're like in their 30s. I looked into it. I found out that we could. The judgment, the actual unpaid child support was only like 30 grand or something because of these tiny payments for 3 children. But the interest piled up since the 1970s, and it was a ton of money. I remember the total amount we were looking for was like $90,000 because it was only 30 in, missed support, and the rest was interest. And we ended up settling for almost all of it. And boy, was that guy mad. He thought he was getting away with it. So interest is the thing that piles up. So be careful. These things just accrue and there's no getting out of it. You can't just wait and hope it goes away. It never goes away. These judgments don't expire. So waiting is very dangerous for the recipient. So that gives you the gist. So basically the bottom line is, if an arrangement in real life deviates from what's in your court order, go change your court order, change your custody agreement. You can do that in a writing between yourselves, but the court should approve it to be safe. And but the child support orders, any modification in child support must be approved by the court. You can agree to the court order, but the court has to stamp it. Otherwise, it doesn't count. And that's another thing. A side deal is not binding. Even if you have a written agreement agreeing to modify child support, the court doesn't have to follow it. You might ask, why is that? I will answer your question, dear made-up listener. The answer is because the court is the one that has to approve the best interest of the child issues and doesn't want people working out some little side deal that screws the children out of money. So the court has to approve changes in child support. So that's why you can work out an agreement. That's great, but take it to the court, get it entered as a correct child support order to protect yourself. So Rahul, I'm going to ask you next, tell us about, and this name is terrible, but it's her stage name. Tell us about Lena the Plug, the OnlyFans, sex worker, I guess, story.
Model.
Model, whatever we say.
Yeah, so Lena, or Lena the Plug, however you say it, is, like you said, an OnlyFans person, model who I guess is married to this gentleman, Adam 22, Adam 22. And so,
not his legal, maybe not his legal name. We don't know.
I don't think that would be his legal name, and so that's the end of that story, right? I just want to tell you they're married. No, but the reason we're telling you this is because she claims, so apparently an individual impersonating Lena the Plug is trying to end her marriage to Adam 22, according to this Page Six article. So according to documents that Page Six obtained, Lena says that that her husband, Adam 22, had been served with divorce papers. However, she says she never filed for divorce. She's saying that it was work of a crazed fan who is trying to get the two of them divorced. She said she's wants the FBI or the police to intervene in this situation, and she says, it's he's now, so someone came up to his door and handed him the paperwork. She has continued to claim, I guess, that a street man has been filing the paperwork in her name to try and end her marriage. So I guess this happened previously, where according to a June 1 petition that Page Six had previously obtained, a person going by her name also filed orders from him and requested primary legal and physical custody of their 5-year-old daughter, Parker. And
So
they also
weird.
all that stuff. She denies it. She's saying all the amounts, all that stuff is fraudulent, false, and that she says this was a quote unquote weird situation. Yeah, it's pretty weird. And she claimed was caused by a crazy psycho stalker fan, in quotes. So, she also claims, though, curiously enough, that this person who filed for the paperwork has previously had cops come perform wellness checks at her home, claiming he was abusing her. She said she loves him. They've been together for 10 years, and they're all plotting for their downfall, but that it's not happening. So very interesting, but also very bizarre.
Yeah, the note on kind of the comment, my thought on that is, just a reminder, anybody can file anything. The question is, can you prove it, and
Yes.
can you back it up? And there'll be some implications for this person filing false pleadings when they find out who it actually is. But theoretically, somebody could forge your name,
Mhm.
prepare pleadings, and file them on your behalf. And then obviously the real you is going to go in there and say, this isn't me. And non-suit, you could dismiss the case. But it's a bizarre situation for sure. I've actually, just when we both
It's
think we've heard of everything, I've never heard of this.
No, exactly. And you know what? And some people online, I'm sure they probably think they're saying, you know what, this is probably just another sort of attention seeking thing for publicity, right? Any publicity is good publicity these days. And so you put your name out there in the blogosphere, as they say. And so you're just kind of, you want to be relevant. So people might think this is another way of them being trying to be relevant. But again, I don't know anything about them. And so it's besides what I just, what we just read. So it seems like she says they didn't do it, and it's a crazy stalker fan.
Yeah.
So we'll see where
Mhm.
it goes. I guess we'll give you guys updates if we hear of any.
Yeah. The Lena the Plug Adam 22 divorce mystery. We're on the edge of our
Yeah.
seats, but it was just so weird. We had to say something. We
Yeah,
always look for
exactly.
like current celebrity divorce
Mhm.
news, and this was like the top story on TMZ, to give TMZ credit. And
Oh yeah.
so we'll have the link in the notes. Okay, we're gonna move on, and we're a little pressed for time, so we're gonna move on to our kind of dating and mating section. And this is from a story in Psychology Today. Moving to Dr. Martin Graf, PhD, not the famous Bruce Lee. But this is interesting because we like to talk about dating trends. And a lot of times it's a catchphrase, and it's like old wine in new bottles, And so we can, unless it's something interesting or different, we're not going to waste your time. This one is interesting because we haven't seen this before. And the article is entitled, "Can Voice Notes Hit the Right Note on Dating Apps?"
Oh, I see what they
So,
did there.
yeah, perfect, right? So this article talks about, and I Googled this, looked around, and said this voice note thing is a trend, and even apparently texting with voice is a trend. And it says, the article talks about, no surprise to anybody. The dating app, I'll get to that part in a second, but many dating apps now offer users the possibility of using voice notes for sending messages to potential matches or as a prompt on their dating profiles. And they say voice notes can enhance connection by conveying information like regional accent or other vocal features like a super deep voice, which might give your potential date more detail, a picture of who you are. Of course, my point is video would be even better, right? And that's meeting in person too, which we talk about a lot. But is leaving the sound of your voice the best strategy? I'm quoting the article, for attracting a potential date compared to messaging by text. Does it facilitate greater initial intimacy? So remember, a dating app really is just to facilitate initial contact. So online dating is supposed to be, you're trying to reduce uncertainty. You want people to feel more confident about meeting you.
Mhm.
So theoretically, voice, video, the more information you're conveying, more signal you're conveying to people out there, the better your chance of getting a person that's interested in you to meet with you and have more success on that first date, because they're not going to be surprised when they meet you and find out because you texted them you have a super high voice and they don't like that or
You
whatever.
just sound goofy. You might be the
Yeah.
best looking guy in the world, but you have the goofiest voice.
Yeah, you sound like Mickey Mouse or something, and they're not excited and they don't want to get together with you, or your photos don't match your voice in their mind or something like that.
Mhm.
So it's, if you're talking about this as a marketing concept, marketing is not just, and I'm talking about my business owner hat, marketing is not just who you are, it's who you are not.
Mhm.
So if you think about it as a marketing problem, and it really is, yes, you want to put your best foot forward, but you don't want to be fake about it either, or you're going to have a lot of first dates and very few second dates. So, because it's basically false advertising. Putting yourself in the best light is one thing, like not wearing the stormtrooper outfit in the photo. But we've talked about that before. That's in much earlier episode. But a voice note, if you've got a nice voice, well, even if you don't have a nice voice, but you want to talk, to let people get a better idea of what you sound like, because they're going to hear it eventually. And that's why I
Right.
think people should drop a video too, or do a video chat maybe before they meet, to have a little first impression. But so there's some a study done years ago, 1986. This is in the article, suggesting richness of communication method used in terms of providing more audio and visual cues helps in reducing uncertainty about the person delivering the message, which is something I've talked about many times with our lawyers and our team. The more important the message, the more it's crucial that it be more signal, meaning video, voice, or in person being the best because it conveys full emotion and perception of you in person. Next best being video. Next best beyond that is audio, followed by emails and text messages, which you go from a high signal to high speed on that continuum, and you lose signal as you go towards text message. And when it's an interpersonal relationship, like I want to date people, they really want to know who you are and what you're like. And the less signal, the less faith they have in the information you're giving. If it's one or two photos and some text and no audio and no video, are they going to lean towards that, or the one that has 20 pictures that look real, not altered, and a voice note and a short video? It makes a big difference. The sound of your voice conveys a lot of emotion, and there's a lot of things people can perceive in voice. And also your level of education, for example, your level of polish.
Confidence, right? Things like confidence. How certain do
Yeah.
you sound? Are you stuttering? Are you just your intonation, all that stuff.
Right. And then here's some good stuff. More studies point out women are more attracted to men with deeper voices, especially for short-term sexual encounters and when ovulating. Good note to know. I'm reading this from the article,
right.
people. Oh, hey now. And I need that on my soundboard. I need the hey now thing. If you want this, you might need to do the voice notes. So in body symmetry, this is interesting. Body symmetry indicating men can withstand disease and injury, i.e. they are stronger, this is a quote, is associated with having a deeper voice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's from the caveman relic. It's one of those biological programmings I think that we have, is that this guy must be able to withstand disease,
This
You can
is-
eat all that poison lettuce without having diarrhea.
Listen to this. And I know this is true because I do this. I was told I do this, and I know I do. Interestingly, of course, they're Italian researchers because they know the story of love, right? So Italian researchers found men who were more successful at securing a second date with women adapted their voices carefully when talking to women, presenting a higher pitched exhibition voice at first, then presenting a lower and warmer self-disclosure voice. Yes. Which
Amazing.
I know I do.
Incredible.
I know I do.
Incredible.
I'm sure I do that. I bet if you ask Julie, my wife, she would say, "Oh yeah, he uses a lower voice."
Hi guys, is what you say first, and then
Hey, what's happening? Then you're like, "What's happening?
what's up?
How you doing?" So the voices that men find attractive in women are higher in pitch, which indicates health and fertility. For those of you taking notes, such voices are associated with higher estrogen levels, which this guy spells the British way, oestrogen, OESTR.
Oh, of course.
Very cool.
Encyclopedia, right?
So fancy. Makes you feel so classy when you read that, like spelling shop with an E, then you know it's going to be
Shoppy.
expensive.
Oh, I know.
Which facilitates ovulation with the higher oestrogen levels, making women appear more attractive. Okay. And that guy says maybe voice notes are not for everyone because often we need time to carefully construct a message, which we can do by text. Maybe we feel bolder sending a text-based message rather than speaking. Or you could have the AI do it and pick a voice with the AI and have it do it. But
Make me sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
yeah. Furthermore, men flirt more via text compared to women. Okay, I didn't know that. Well, women are mostly putting us on read. That's why, right?
Left
They're
on
just
red, yep.
They're reading like 20 dudes or 100. So whether or not you want to do it depends on how confident you are about your voice. Maybe you want to get that voice coach ahead of time, or record yourself first, and you think you sound great, and then you record it and you sound like Mickey Mouse when you play it back, or Kermit. You got to check that first. But this is a great line at the end that I had to read. So an old friend told me, this is the author, I'm going to quote and name him, for Martin Graff. This is a great article. Link in the notes. An old friend told me before they met face to face, his girlfriend to be spoke with him on the phone and said she thought I had a very attractive voice. But on meeting, she told him she was initially very disappointed in how he looked. No picture. I need a picture of this guy. Like, what did he look like? Was he tiny, or what happened? The happy ending of the story is they're now married. So I guess, he's obviously made a good first impression, it said. But yeah, you want to make sure, does your voice match your vibe?
Your aura. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that's it. So let's, a couple things. We work for SCG Divorce Law in Chicago. We serve the entire Chicagoland area, newest office in Lake Forest, Illinois. We help smart, successful people get divorced in Chicagoland. STGlawfirm.com. Rahul, where can you be found online?
You can find me on Instagram at Chicago Divorce and on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you. I can be found at Rayford Palmer all over the interwebs. And we're on YouTube. This show, every episode's on YouTube going back to the very beginning. And we're on all the major podcast platforms. Please like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends. A surprising number of lawyers watch and listen to the show, which continues to surprise us. But we've had lawyers come up to us in conventions and conferences and say, I love your show, which we appreciate. Thank you out there. And we're glad you're entertained. We did not know you would like it. I guess if we find it amusing, you probably will too. So that's probably why lawyers like it. Mm-hmm. But we want to keep you entertained and informed. And if we get it wrong, this isn't legal advice. We're doing this for entertainment purposes. If you want to talk to us for a consultation and you're interested in divorce, prenup, or postnup, please check us out at stglawfirm.com, or just Google STG Divorce Law. Super easy to find. And thank you for listening and watching. Please review us on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube. That's how we know you love the show. That's our gentleman's agreement with you. That's all we ask. This show is free of charge to you. All you got to do is click that button or tap your screen. No big deal. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. And check out my book, I Just Want This Done, How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids' Money and Minds. Available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and where all great ebooks are sold. I did the narration, I promise. It's awesome because I have a very deep, sexy voice.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, everybody have a great day. Take it easy.
Thanks.